After 60, the world grows quieter in ways we don't always expect. But beneath that silence, a new kind of strength is waiting, not outside you, but within you. Family shifts, friendships stretch thin, even our own bodies whisper differently than they once did. What once felt unshakable now moves, changes, rearranges itself in ways we can't always catch in time. Today, we'll walk together through 6 quiet pillars, not built of stone or promises, but of small, steady choices you can build into the ground beneath your own feet. Choices that are yours to hold, yours to tend, and yours to trust. 1. Financial stability, the ground beneath your steps. There was a time when trust felt like enough. Trust in family, trust in the rhythms of work and retirement, trust that when you stumbled, there would be arms ready to catch you. But life after 60 whispers a different truth. The strongest arms you can lean on are the ones you build beneath your own feet. Richard once believed love would be his safety net, and love was there, in spirit, in good intentions. But when an unexpected storm swept through his life, what mattered most was the quiet ground he had or hadn't prepared for himself. Not wealth, not abundance, just steadiness. The bills that still needed paying, the medicines that didn't wait for better times, the choices that came softer when they came from his own pocket. Science would call it financial resilience, but the soul knows it more simply. Security isn't how much you have, it's how deeply you've rooted yourself against winds you cannot predict. So, you build quietly now. A small saving here, a thoughtful choice there, a plan whispered into the margins of your days. Not because you expect disaster, but because you love yourself enough to offer shelter when the skies darken without warning. You are not building walls, you are planting steadiness. So that wherever you go, whatever storms gather, you have somewhere within yourself that does not fall. The surest journeys begin with ground you've blessed with your own quiet hands. 2. Physical health, the silent companion. There is a companion who has walked with you longer than any other. It carried you through childhood tumbles, young ambition, decades of busy living. And now, after 60, it still walks beside you, not with shouts or demands, but with whispers. Your body doesn't clamor for attention. It simply asks gently to be remembered. Carl, once full of restless strength, let his body slip into quiet neglect. Small aches became familiar. Steps he once skipped up 2 at a time began to stretch into effort. It didn't happen in one day. It never does. Decline moves like a soft tide, almost unnoticeable until you find yourself standing at the base of a staircase, wondering when it grew so steep. But here's the grace. The body, though quieter, still listens, still responds. When Carl began again, a slow walk around the block, a meal chosen with a little more green and a little less regret. A morning stretch that greeted the sunrise. Ease returned, not all at once, but enough to remind him that strength was never truly lost, only waiting to be tended to. Science would list bone density, muscle mass, circulation, but healing says it's softer. Your body is still your partner, and like any old friend, it asks only for your time, your tenderness, and your willingness to keep walking together. You do not move to become who you once were. You move to stay in gentle conversation with the life still unfolding inside you. 3rd social circle, the hearth you build yourself. A fire left waiting for old wood may flicker itself out before warmth ever returns. Margaret once sat by the phone like a lighthouse waiting for familiar sails. Birthdays, holidays, those soft, ordinary calls that once came without prompting. But seasons shifted, and the tides that once carried voices home moved further out. At first, the silence felt like forgetting, like standing outside a house you helped build, only to find the door gently closed. But grief, if listened to closely, often carries an invitation hidden inside it. Margaret began again, not loudly, not out of bitterness, but out of a quiet longing to feel the fire of connection rise once more. She joined a morning walking group where small nods grew into conversation. She visited a library where a familiar face became a monthly coffee. She smiled at neighbors whose names she never knew, until one day she did. And slowly, a new hearth grew, not built from history, but from presence. Friendship after 60 is not a relic of the past. It's a garden you tend now. One small seed, one warm glance, one open moment at a time. Science might cite social isolation as a risk factor, but healing knows it more gently. The heart still hungers for belonging, and it is never too late to answer its quiet call. You are not waiting for someone to save you from loneliness. You are learning tenderly to build new bridges with your own two hands. Fourth, sense of purpose, the quiet compass. There comes a season when the clocks no longer demand your time, when calendars loosen their grip and the rushing tides of busy years settle into a quieter shore. For George, retirement at first felt like a wide, open meadow, stretching with possibilities, untouched by the heavy footprints of obligation. But as the weeks softened into months, he noticed something slipping. Not from his calendar, but from himself. The days were full, but his heart felt hollow, adrift without a lighthouse to call it back to shore. It wasn't work he missed, it was meaning. One afternoon, on a whim, he volunteered at a library. Just a few hours, just shelving books, just small conversations with strangers who love stories too. And slowly, a thread stitched itself back into his days. Not busyness, not noise, but a sense of belonging to something just a little larger than himself. Purpose doesn't always arrive with trumpets and banners. Sometimes it hums quietly from the corner of a sunlit room, or rises softly in the voice of a child asking for help, or blooms slowly in the soil of ordinary giving. Science calls it psychological resilience, cognitive vitality, but the soul knows it differently. A spirit without purpose does not rest. It drifts, it hungers. Purpose after 60 isn't about proving your usefulness. It's about staying in conversation with what still lights your heart. And even now, especially now, there are songs only you were meant to keep singing. 5. Emotional resilience, the gentle armor. Not all armor is forged from iron and fire. Some is woven slowly from mornings you choose to rise, even when the weight of yesterday still leans heavily against your ribs. Helen knew grief intimately. It met her in the stillness after her husband's laughter faded, in the silent spaces once filled with shared glances. At first, she reached outward. Calls, gatherings, endless conversations to drown the echo of her own missing. But solace, she found, did not live in the noise. It waited inward in the soft rituals she rebuilt with her own two hands. A journal cracked open each morning, lines filled not with answers, but with breath and memory, and the simplest kind of gratitude. I woke up. I am still here. A cup of tea savored slowly, without urgency, without agenda. A walk through the same street, watching how the light changed, even if her life felt stalled. Over time, what once felt hollow began to hum again, not loudly, but steadily. Science speaks of emotional coping, resilience theory, but healing whispers it softer. True strength after loss is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to stay open, to life, to mornings, to hope. You do not heal by rushing through sadness. You heal by sitting beside it, gently enough that it begins to soften under your touch. And every small act of tending yourself becomes a thread in the invisible armor you quietly wear into each new day. 6. Adaptability, the door that still opens. The river does not stand still when the land shifts beneath it. It bends. It hums a new path into the earth that once seemed unmovable. Frank, 78, was a man of familiar rhythms. The same coffee shop, the same handwritten letters, the same Sunday morning walks on roads etched by decades of memory. When the world tilted, when friends moved away, when voices grew digital and distant, he resisted. Screens felt cold, new ways felt foreign. He clung to the known, believing that letting go meant losing everything he cherished. But loneliness, persistent and patient, sat with him longer than pride. One morning, more from longing than curiosity, Frank accepted a call on a shimmering screen. A granddaughter's laugh burst through, warm and awkward, but real. And just like the river that does not break when it bends, Frank found that adaptation wasn't abandonment. It was continuation. A bridge to new conversations. A doorway into a world that still had space for him, if he was willing to step through differently. Science would call it cognitive flexibility, adaptive resilience, but healing says it softer. To adapt is not to erase where you've been. It is to make room for where life is still waiting to meet you. The traditions that shaped you remain. The roots that ground you deepen. Adaptation is simply how you continue weaving new branches into the tree that has carried so many seasons. Change does not take you away from yourself. It allows you to stay close to the living, breathing world you are still very much a part of. There comes a moment when you realize your strength was never anchored in someone else's hands. It lived quietly, beneath every choice you made to stand back up, to begin again, to carry your own weight even when the world felt too heavy. It wasn't the promises whispered to you. It was the ones you whispered to yourself, in the quiet, in the lonely hours, when no one else could see how much it cost you to keep walking. You have always been your own foundation, not because others failed, but because you quietly chose to keep being steady even when no one was watching. There's a quiet ache in realizing that the hands you once reached for have turned to tend their own shores. The spaces between calls stretch wider. The familiar chairs at gatherings sit empty longer. And the world, once circled so closely around you, moves out toward other horizons. At first, it stings, a hollowing you cannot name aloud. But if you stay still long enough, beneath the ache, something steadier begins to rise. Not a replacement, not a forgetting, but a remembering that your roots were never only planted in the nearness of others. They were woven deep into your own soil, quietly, patiently, over years you sometimes forgot to count. What feels like loneliness at first is often just the slow blooming of your own sovereignty. You are not losing connection. You are discovering a home inside yourself that no tide, no absence, no distance can erase. And that quiet anchoring, is not the end of belonging. It is where true belonging finally begins. If one of these pillars stirred something inside you, whisper still steady below. Not because you have to prove anything, but because you already are. You are not fading with time. You are being carved deeper by it, into something steadier, something more whole. Change has not left you behind. It has called you inward, to a place where roots grow quietly stronger, where dignity builds without noise. Each small choice you make now, to move, to heal, to reach out, to begin again, lays another stone in the home you are quietly crafting inside yourself. A place no storm can enter, a foundation no season can shake. You are not losing your place in the world. You are finding it more truly, more tenderly than ever before. If this quiet journey found a place inside you, there's no need to rush away. Pause here, breathe, and if your heart feels ready, walk a little further with us. Subscribe not out of habit, but as a gentle promise to yourself, to keep tending the life you are still so beautifully shaping. Share softly if you know another soul whose roots are still quietly growing deeper, even as the seasons change. Because true steadiness isn't something you chase, it's something you choose, again and again, with tenderness and time.